Hey, it's Erie. Today I'm back with part 5 of our What Is It series to talk about periodization. Periodization is a concept that becomes really important with sports that have a specific competition period, like track and field has the spring season and the winter season. Football has its competition season, but it can also be really important for horseback riding too, especially if you're showing on the summer circuit or doing summer and winter. So what periodization helps you do is it helps set the athlete up to achieve peak performance at that most critical point, or if you have a longer season like the horseback riding show seasons, it helps you maintain your strength and power that you built up before the competition period so that you can maintain overall your best performance possible during the competition season. So the way that periodization works is it breaks down different parts of the training year into smaller bite-sized pieces that help you plan your workouts so that you get peak performance at the right time. So I'm going to draw out a little chart to explain what that looks like. So you have the annual training plan, which is just what it sounds like, your overall training year. And that's broken down into periods called macrocycles, which can last from a few months up to a year, depending on the needs of the sport and what their competition seasons look like. And the macrocycles are broken down into mesocycles, which are typically like 2 to 6 weeks. And then mesocycles are broken down into microcycles, which can be anywhere from a few days up to 2 weeks. It's typically about a week or two. And then microcycles are broken down into training days. And depending on the sport, sometimes you have multiple training sessions per day. So that's why training days are broken down into actual training sessions. So you build the training session around what you want to accomplish specifically in that microcycle, mesocycle, macrocycle, all in the grand scheme of the annual training plan. So practically that looks like breaking down either the annual training plan or the macrocycles, depending on how many competition seasons you have throughout the year. You break those down into 4 different periods. So I'm going to list them out real quick. They can be broken down into preparatory period, which if you're just doing a summer show circuit would be from like October to January. And then you have the first transition, which is like that pre-season phase between the preparatory period, which is like the off season, and then the next period, which is competition. And the final period is the second transition, which is like your postseason or a period of active rest. And the goals of each of these periods are different, and it's all centered around getting you best prepared for that competition period. So the preparatory period typically has 2 phases. The first is hypertrophy, which is just increasing the size of your muscles depending on the nature of the sport. Sometimes that's what you want. Or, as far as we're concerned, strength endurance, which is just muscular endurance and a little bit of cardio, building that aerobic base. And then the second period is basic strength. So within the first section here, the hypertrophy and strength endurance, volumes are going to be high, but intensity is going to be low because you want to build that base, that endurance of your muscles so that you don't get super tired when you're working out or riding. And then basic strength is when you increase the loads a little bit more and drop volume just a little bit to build actual strength. And then that's about like October to January for someone doing the summer circuit. And then going into the first transition, which is like the preseason, as I mentioned before, you're working more on strength and power development. So your strength is becoming a little bit more functional. So here is strength and power. And then this is really where you're going to be getting your body ready for the intensity of the competition season. So there's going to be little fluctuations within the first transition to allow for recovery in between those heavier training weeks or training days. And then between the first transition and the competition season, there's going to be a week of recovery to allow your body to regroup, get ready for what's coming next. And the competition period, typically like for a summer season, is probably like April to August. So the first transition would be from like February to March. So for a competition season, that's where intensities are going to be high, but volume is going to be low because you're going to be spending more time in the saddle. So you want to decrease the amount of time that you're spending in the weight room or at home working out, depending what you have access to. So you need to find a balance between increasing intensity and decreasing volume, because if you decrease volume too much, you're not going to be doing enough to keep yourself fit and keep yourself in the shape that you need to be in to have a successful competition season and just perform as best you can. But on the other hand, if you increase intensity too much and don't drop volume enough, then you put yourself at risk for fatigue and potentially overtraining syndrome. So it's really key to find that little sweet spot between increasing intensity and decreasing volume. So the loads are going to be like moderate to high, low to moderate volume depending on the loads. And again, just like in the first transition period, there's going to be some fluctuations within the microcycle level depending on your riding schedule, travel schedule, and competition schedules. And then when the competition is over, you go into the second transition, which is active rest. And one thing about the second transition is, like, you need to find that balance between increasing intensity and decreasing volume. You need to find that sweet spot for this period here. You don't want it to be too long and let yourself get too deconditioned, because that means that you're going to need to have a longer preparatory period for the next competition year. Because you lost so much of your base, you need to have a longer time to build it back up again. But you also want to make sure that you don't let yourself take too short of a break, and then don't give your body enough rest that it needs to really perform at its best next year. So this is typically around like the month of September. 4 weeks is a pretty good active rest period. During a period of active rest, you're not necessarily working out, but what you are doing is you're doing fun activities like going for a bike ride, going for a hike, playing games with family and friends, something that gets you moving, maybe even breaking a sweat. So it's more fun, relaxed work. It's not necessarily anything formal or organized. And typically you don't need more than 4 weeks, like I said before, unless you have an injury that needs more time to recover. That's it for periodization, part 5 of our What Is It series. Next time I'm going to be talking about Metcon, or metabolic conditioning. Hope to see you guys then. Take care.